A major weather pattern change will be coming to the United States over the next 7 days, with a major heat wave in store. Record-breaking high temperatures a possibility from the Great Plains back into the Northeast, and more severe weather will continue over the next 7 days, with scattered damaging winds, some large hail, and a few tornadoes being a possibility. So in today's forecast, we are going to break down exactly what you need to know about the weather that'll be impacting the United States over the next 7 days, and we'll begin with what's happening across the country today. And we are coming off of a pretty active day of severe weather yesterday that spanned from the Midwest all the way back into the Central Plains. You'll notice this right here is the remnants of the storms that we had yesterday. We ended up having over 8 tornado warnings across the board, anywhere from Nebraska back into Wisconsin. But generally speaking, any tornadoes that we saw yesterday were on the very brief side of things, which is good news. But we still had plenty of damaging winds and hail to pair along with that. Back along the East Coast, things are quiet today. It's been pretty quiet here over the last few days. Don't really expect a whole lot of severe weather in this area really in the foreseeable future, but generally speaking, isolated pop-up storms will be a possibility almost every day. Now let's talk more about the weather pattern that'll be impacting the United States over the next 7 days, and to look at that, we are going to look at our mid-level flow and our jet stream. This is what it looks like right now. We have a little shortwave trough that is actually going to be moving across the Central Plains and the Midwest over the next couple of days. This could bring some pretty significant flooding, and on top of that, a little bit of severe weather is possible from the Central Plains back into the Midwest both Friday and Saturday. We will talk more about that here in a moment. We also have a large high pressure system back over in the southeast. That's why things are mostly quieter down here, especially in Florida, where we've really not had much rain here over the last few days. By the weekend and early next week, we're going to start to see a really big weather pattern flip across the country. We're going to see this high pressure system intensify and retreat back to the west, and what that's going to allow for is our jet stream to lift very far off to the north. And once that actually happens, we are essentially going to be seeing a much warmer and drier weather pattern for a vast majority of the lower 48. So this is really good news if you have any sort of summer plans, but also the bad news is it's going to be super hot out there across the entire country. By the time we get closer to the middle of next week, not really many changes to the forecast. Big high pressure system stays in place, a little bit of northwesterly flow in the Midwest, but this probably will not bring much in the way of severe weather with a lack of moisture because of how strong this high pressure system will be. And then really the next time that we might see at least some organized severe weather could be the later half of the first week of August. But even then, I really do not see very many signs of significant and really organized threats of severe weather, even just beyond the next few days. And even the next few days, those are mostly going to be mesoscale severe weather days, which means more localized, but potentially significant days of severe weather. And these are the watches and warnings across the country from the National Weather Service. And we have extreme heat warnings that are in effect right along the Mississippi River Valley, where heat indices, which are the feel-like temperatures, could exceed 110 over the next several days. This will probably last well into next week as well. Definitely make sure that you're staying hydrated and check on any vulnerable neighbors that you may have, as we could easily see some really dangerous heat that could also cause things like heat stroke and other heat illnesses. We also have heat advisories in effect anywhere in the orange, which literally goes all the way from Texas into the Ohio Valley and also into the Northeast. We may even see some record-breaking high temperatures back over in the Northeast as well, where there are also a few extreme heat warnings that are currently in effect. And just to give you an idea of how long this heat is going to last, these are our temperature anomalies, which is basically the difference from above and below average temperatures. And we are expecting this heat to continue, especially in the Midwest and back into the Ohio Valley over the next several days, all the way through the weekend and into early next week. And all those above average temperatures will be lingering around at least through Wednesday or Thursday of next week. Might see a little bit of relief back over in the northern tier of the country by the weekend. That'll be anywhere east of the Rockies. So some below average temperatures may return, but this time of the year, this is really not anything crazy. We're talking maybe about a 10 to 15 degree temperature drop, which might just be enough for you to have more outdoor activities. But generally speaking, this heat wave will last at least for the next 6 to 7 days across the United States. And these are the high temperatures that are being forecasted over the next 7 to 10 days, beginning with Friday. Most areas will be in the low to mid 100s back over in Texas. On the other end, things back over in Iowa and Minnesota look pretty nice, 70s and 80s, but the humidity will not be a help for that. It is going to be still very humid. By Saturday and Sunday, we're not really expecting any major changes, but we should start to see some 100s surge back over into South Dakota and Nebraska. Additionally, areas like South Carolina, Georgia could be into the 100s. We could be talking about 105, 106 in some spots. It could get extremely hot over in those areas too, and we do not usually see that high of temperatures this time of the year. Even look at this, by Monday and Tuesday, we could actually see areas like Jacksonville, Florida get near 109 degrees. I know that might not sound crazy, but for Florida standards, with all the humidity and the storms that we see, seeing temperatures that high is very abnormal. So 109 would be absolutely crazy if that happens. And then back over in Arkansas, back even through South Dakota, many areas will be from 100 to 108 by Tuesday and Wednesday, looking at the same sort of trend. One of the warmest days will likely be Wednesday of this week, anywhere in the Virginia and North Carolina areas in the low to mid 100s. And we may even see some areas like Dallas, Fort Worth, back over into Louisiana be near 110 degrees. If that were to happen, we are talking about the potential for record-breaking high temperatures. The heat indices are another big problem. This is the feel-like temperatures factoring in moisture, and then on top of that, the actual temperature. On Tuesday, this will probably be one of the worst days of the week. It's going to be very humid and very hot from the Dixie Alley all the way back into the Midwest. Many areas will feel as high as 105 to 115 degrees. And then even as we go into Wednesday, we're really looking at basically the same story for a large chunk of at least the southern tier of the country, where most areas, including Louisiana, Mississippi, all the way back even into Maryland and New Jersey, will feel like the 100s. So be ready for some really hot weather here over the next 7 to 10 days. Now let's talk more about the severe weather potential for the next few days, beginning with today, which is Thursday, and we have a large marginal threat of severe weather in place anywhere from the Midwest all the way back into the high plains, where there will be a low-end threat for some pockets of damaging winds between 50 to 65 miles per hour. I do think we could even see a slight risk of severe weather introduced in a future outlook back over in parts of Michigan, maybe even near Chicago, Illinois. So be ready for that possibility, but again, I think it'll be mainly driven by damaging winds. Also, an isolated large hailstorm or two are a possibility. That'll be primarily, though, in the high plains. There is no tornado risk outlined as of right now. However, I do think that we could see an isolated brief tornado somewhere in this region. That's anywhere from around Chicago, near Urbana, all the way back over towards Kalamazoo and near Detroit in Michigan. So definitely stay weather aware and have ways to receive warnings. Very low chance of a live stream today, especially if we have any tornado warnings in those areas. On Friday, we'll have another risk of severe weather. There's actually one that I think should be outlined that is not currently outlined, but we have a marginal threat back over in the Northeast and also in North Dakota. I do think there's a sneaky chance, though, for a couple of tornadoes, damaging winds, and hail back over in Kansas, Nebraska, maybe even southwest Iowa and western Missouri tomorrow, maybe because of a mesoscale convective vortex. So this is something we need to keep an eye on, but overall, again, damaging winds and hail are the main concerns across the board. If this were to actually be a threat tomorrow, we would also see a risk of severe weather go all the way into the Midwest on Saturday, and the Storm Prediction Center for now has a small marginal threat of severe weather in place for areas like Illinois, Indiana, Ohio, Michigan, and Wisconsin, but I do think this could easily be larger than this, and we would even have a low-end tornado risk if we were to see a remnant mesoscale convective vortex, which, for those that don't know what I'm talking about, it's basically a remnant area. It's kind of like a small little low pressure system, but it's basically an area of elevated vorticity and spin. So that is something we'll have to be keeping a close eye on. Now let's talk more about the timing of severe weather, beginning with today across the Midwest. Really will not see much storm activity until about 4 to 5 o'clock, where storms will start to initiate anywhere from even Kansas City all the way back into Michigan, where isolated damaging winds and hail will be the main concerns. We'll have mainly just clusters of storms that form, so 50 to 60 mile per hour winds, and some pocket change sized hail is a possibility this afternoon. May see a brief tornado, and if we were to see one, I think the best chance is going to be in central southern Michigan, but maybe even a low-end chance back off to the west there of Chicago by around 6 or 7 o'clock. By 8 to 9 o'clock tonight, storms will continue. They'll be pretty spotty overall. I think most of these will lose their energy by around 9 o'clock tonight, and then after that, we just got a lot of rain out there, which could lead to some localized flooding, especially since areas like southern Michigan are going to be dealing with likely at least a few rounds of thunderstorms. Into the overnight hours and into Friday morning, things start to kind of dry out, and we'll have a little bit more rain left over back over in Missouri and Iowa. And then back over in the Central Plains, we're expecting some pop-up storms today. Isolated damaging winds and hail, once again a possibility in central Kansas. This clears out, though, pretty quickly after sunset, but notice that we're going to be seeing a lot of rain overnight. So we're going to be dealing with at least a brief round of severe weather. The bigger concern, though, is going to be the flooding risk, and I wouldn't even be surprised if we saw an isolated area of major flooding tonight, as we'll have a lot of rain just kind of overlapping for several hours on end. Could even see some pockets of 4 to 8 inches of rainfall tonight. And then as we go into Friday, we got even more rain coming, and then perhaps a localized area of severe weather in eastern Kansas, with damaging winds, isolated hail, and perhaps an isolated tornado or two being a possibility, and then that would eventually weaken as we go into the evening hours. So definitely be mindful of major flooding potential in Kansas tonight. And then as we go into Saturday, the threat of severe weather will likely continue across the Midwest. We'll probably at least see a few hailstorms out of this particular event during the mid to late afternoon and early evening, but I do have at least some confidence that there will be a low-end tornado potential anywhere from around Chicago and Fort Wayne all the way back into very far northeastern Missouri during the afternoon. So it's something to keep an eye on, but generally speaking, I think the risk of severe weather is still going to be on the low side of things. Definitely nothing more than probably a slight risk of of severe weather for this particular event. And unfortunately, over the next few days, we are expecting the potential for major flooding across areas like the Midwest and back into the Central Plains. Luckily, the Midwest, I don't think we're really talking about major flooding, but low-lying areas definitely could see some localized flooding in creeks and rivers. Areas like Kansas, though, could be talking about a bit more of a major threat, as I do think there will be a better chance of at least some scattered areas picking up around 3 to 6 inches of rain. Localized spots could easily be over 8 inches of rain when this event is all said and done. Majority of that rain will fall tonight, but some could also fall into tomorrow. And then as we dive into the future, we are expecting the threat of severe weather to really stay on the lower side of things beyond Saturday. I think the northern plains may see a couple days of severe weather, but really nothing that crazy. By the time we go into Monday and Tuesday of next week, we'll probably start to see the return of at least some scattered showers and storms across the southeast and back into the Ohio Valley. And then eventually by the middle and end of next week, we got high pressure building across the northern plains and the Ohio Valley, and that will keep things much drier and warmer up there as we begin August. I think overall, though, the severe weather threat for the next really foreseeable future does not look that crazy. I really do not see any big days of severe weather in the near future. So let's hope it stays that way. But overall, at least the next few days do have potential of severe weather that might just be enough to trigger a live stream. And as always, thank you all so much for watching today's forecast. If you are new to the channel, make sure to subscribe down below. There's really no chance of a video tomorrow. I think our next video will be on Saturday. And then beyond that, not really expecting many live stream chances, but make sure you click the bell icon so you're notified if and when we do go live.